So, for our fun time today, we're going to talk about the difference of squares. Now, when we talk about the difference of squares, is what we're really wanting to find out what's the difference between square number 1 and square number 2? Well, no, not really. Kind of, because yes, square number 1 is different than square number 2, but that's not what we're trying to do. We are going to figure out, using the difference of squares, how to solve a really cool math problem. And actually, I don't want you to think of it as a math problem. I want you to think of it as a math puzzle, because they're really fun to do. So what we're looking at right now is a math puzzle that we want to figure out how to make a difference of squares. First of all, what is a difference of squares? What's the definition of that term? Well, the difference of squares is two terms that are squared and separated by a subtraction sign. That sounds maybe a little complicated, but it's really easy. And let me show you why. Because we have two different terms that are squared. So let's say the first term is A. We're going to square that term. Now we have one term that is squared. We're going to take another term and we're going to say that term is B. And we are going to square that term as well. Now we have two terms. They need to be separated by a subtraction sign. The subtraction sign is the difference. We know that when we subtract two numbers, the answer to that problem is a difference. Thus, we have the difference of squares. We have square number 1, which is A2, square number 2, which is B squared, and they are separated in the middle by a subtraction sign, which means the difference of A squared and B squared. And that would be the answer to the puzzle. That's just an example. That's not the answer to the puzzle that we're working with, though. So what we want to do is figure out, how do we take this puzzle and get the answer that we're looking for, so we have two squares that have a subtraction sign between them, the difference of two squares from this particular puzzle. We're going to do that using what is called the FOIL method. The FOIL method.
Curses foiled again.
The FOIL method. Now, what do I do with this? What do I do with the FOIL method? Well, this is actually the magic part of the puzzle. Okay, we talked about the definition of the difference of squares, but what's the definition of FOIL? We want to use this magic potion to figure out our puzzle, so we have to understand what FOIL really means. FOIL simply means, it's simply an acronym that means first, outside, inside, and last. That's just a way to remember how we want to approach this puzzle. How do we put the pieces in place, in what order? So the first, you will see, of our puzzle, the puzzle has two different parts. And when we're talking about the first, we want to talk about the first part of each puzzle. So we have the first, which is a 4 in the first part of the puzzle, and the first part of the second part of the puzzle is a 4 also. So we're going to look at those two, and because they're in parentheses, we know that we're going to times 4 times 4. That's the first thing we do. So then we go to outside. Well, what does outside mean? Well, outside means the outside of the puzzle. So again, we start with 4 because it's the outside of the first part of the puzzle. But then we go over to the B, which is the outside of the second part of the puzzle. And remember, the B has a minus sign right in front of it. So that's going to be very important when we start doing our magic here and figuring out the puzzle. Next, we look at the inside. So the inside parts of this puzzle is the B on the first portion of the puzzle and the 4 on the second part of the puzzle. And remember, again, just as before, this B has a plus sign right in front of it, which again is going to be very important to our solving this puzzle. Then we go From the inside, we go to last. The last thing we do is the last part of the puzzles. What does that mean by last? Well, the first portion of the puzzle has a B, and the second portion of the puzzle has a B as the last parts of those portions. So we're going to combine the plus B and the minus B together when we start putting this magic potion to work. So let's figure out how we actually are going to do that. Let's get a little bit of room here to work with, and let's start doing our magic. The first thing we're going to do is go to the first portion of both of the puzzles. Well, as we know, the first portion are 2 4s, and we're going to multiply those 2 4s, which is going to give us 4 squared. Then we're going to go to the outside. Well, the outside, as we talked about before, is the 4 on the first portion of the puzzle and the minus B on the second part of the puzzle. Now remember, I said the minus part in front of that B is going to be really important. So that's what is going to create the first symbol that we have on the next part. So it's going to be a minus because we're timesing 4 times a minus B. So that's going to give us minus 4B. The next thing we're going to go to is the inside portion. With the inside portion, again, as you remember, that is your plus B and your 4 on the opposite side. So that's going to give us, because there's a plus sign in front of that B, that's going to give us plus 4B because we multiply them. You have the numeral is in front of the B, so we have a plus 4B. And the last thing we do is the last parts of both of the pieces of the puzzle. The B plus B and the minus B that are together. So that's going to, because we're taking a plus positive and we're times it by a negative, we're going to get a negative B squared because we're timesing both of the B's. So now at this point, what we have is the actual first portion to our puzzle of fixing this, the 4 plus B times 4 minus B. Now we know that if we have a positive 2 and a negative 2, and we combine those two, they cancel each other out. They make 0. So if you take 2 minus 2, you have 0. So we know we can do that with this particular puzzle as well. So what we want to do is take portions of the puzzle that we can get rid of and simplify this whole thing. Just take it out of the mix and be able to make this smaller so it's easier to work with. So we know that we have a minus 4B and a positive 4B. So they will both cancel each other out. So now they're not even part of the puzzle anymore. We've taken them and just gotten rid of them. So really all we have left at this point is 4 squared and minus B squared. So 4 squared is what? 4 squared means 4 times 4. So that equals 16. Then what we have left at this point is our negative B squared. So we're going to minus our B squared. So the end result is the difference of 2 squares. 16 is a square, as we know, because that is 4 squared, and B squared already is a square. So we have the difference of 2 squares.